Hello, everybody, and welcome to EduMatch. So today I'm very honored to have Jeff Knutson join us here. And he is with Common Sense Media, and he's just phenomenal. We got a chance to hang out during ISTE. And I was just, I'm blown away by the work that you do, Jeff, and the work of Common Sense Media. So I'm just going to go ahead and read your bio just to introduce you. And
Sure.
So here's a little bit about Jeff if you want to know. So as Senior Manager of Education Content for Common Sense Education, Jeff works with the editorial team to rate and review digital media for learning potential as well as developmental appropriateness. Jeff comes to Common Sense Education with more than 10 years of classroom experience. He taught high school English, including classes for beginning English learners, where he employed the latest tech tools in his daily teaching. From tablets in the classroom to microblogging assignments and digital citizenship lessons, Jeff's aim was to increase engagement and learning for all of his students, especially those who struggled. He holds a master's degree in education from the Lewis and Clark College Graduate School of Education. So welcome, Jeff.
Thank you. So kind of you, and it's great to be here. And it was really great to meet up with you at ISTE I guess it was a couple of weeks ago now.
Yeah, time does fly, right?
I know.
Yeah, that is insane. But yeah, so it's great to see you again virtually. So just going to kick things off with a little bit of an introduction. So tell me a little bit about your background in education.
Yeah, so, before coming to Common Sense Media and Common Sense Education, where I am now, I was in the classroom for 10 years in one way or another, mostly teaching high school English, including some sheltered beginning level ELL classes for English learners. But I think, there was a time where I just went through a shift where I decided, I really want to get into using more technology in my classroom, and I started doing that. And then one thing led to another, and I ended up here at Common Sense Media, Common Sense Education, where we really focus a lot on technology in the classroom and all of the things related to technology in learning.
Exactly, and I love how you all help educators and parents just kind of just know, exactly what's appropriate and how to integrate it to really maximize learning. So I think that is just amazing. So
well, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So who or what inspired you to go into education?
Well, that's so many things. That's kind of a hard question for me to answer because there are so many people and so many things that inspired me. I would say my mom was, and she kind of still is, a teacher. She's retired, but they can't get rid of her. She still volunteers in the school where she taught for a long time. And my teachers, when I was younger, my teachers were always telling me to go into teaching, and it just kind of ended up where I was destined to go career-wise, I think. I can't imagine doing anything else that wasn't totally, in some way, maybe not totally, but in some way related to education. I think the main thing, though, back in the early 2000s, I lived in Denver and I worked as a tutor in a public school. And I worked with a group of East African refugee students, mostly from Somalia. And there was this one student there named Abdi. And I was like the new teacher. I was like the new guy in the school. And this student took me under his wing. And he probably helped me fit in as much as I helped him with his homework. Long story short, after that school year, I just decided I'm going to go to grad school. I'm going to get a master's in education. I'm going to be a teacher. This kid, Abdi, who's not a kid anymore, he and I have kept in touch since then. He's married, has kids, and it's really cool. So I think sometimes it's just like one person or one thing can inspire you. And that's what happened to me. And then now here I am.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, that story really speaks to the power of relationships, with the ones that we create with students, they're really the foundation for learning, and they're just so important. So
Absolutely.
Appreciate you sharing that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So now you're with Common Sense. So in case any viewers are not familiar, what is Common Sense and how did you get involved with them?
Well, it's easier for me to explain what Common Sense is than how I got involved here, but maybe we'll save that or we can get into that. But Common Sense does three main things. We say we rate, we educate, and we advocate. And so most people know our ratings and reviews. They might think of us, and the first thing they think of is our movie reviews for kids. Is this movie okay for my 13-year-old? And people will look it up. But we also have an advocacy arm called Common Sense Kids Action. That's sort of the political and legislative side of how we as an organization are helping kids and families at the legislative level, both at the state level and the national level and the federal level. But I work with Common Sense Education, and our education team does a lot of things. Most people know us for our DigCit resources or digital citizenship, but we also do ratings and reviews of ed tech tools, different apps and websites and games that teachers can use. And we also have content with tips and advice on how teachers can best utilize tech in the classroom. And that's a big part of what I do here at Common Sense. And how I ended up here is a long story, but but it's great, and I'm happy I'm here.
Oh, that is cool. So glad that you're there as well. And doing some amazing work. So speaking of digital citizenship, because I heard you just mention it. So what does that actually mean, and why is it important?
Yeah, I mean, to me, our world is so connected today, and we're so digitally focused today. That, but I think it's unavoidable to me to live in a world that's completely disconnected from digital technology, digital resources. And so I really feel like the line between digital citizenship and what we just consider citizenship is really starting to go away in some regards. I don't think you have to love technology. I don't blindly embrace the trend toward a more digital world, but I think, to me, digital citizenship is all about being a critical thinker about all of the new opportunities that digital tools bring us, but also, looking out for some of the pitfalls that might be there as well. I'm all about promoting the good, avoiding the not as good, and maybe calling out some of the bad. There's all kinds of resources out there, and the digital world presents us with all these opportunities. When I think about citizenship, it's just about, to me, I hate to sound cliche, but just being a good person. And I think, how do we be a good person? How do we connect with people in the digital world too? At the end of the day, it's all about people connecting in the most real and meaningful ways and just understanding each other. So I think it's a hard question to answer, because I think digital citizenship is it's so big. But yes, that's kind of how I feel.
I feel you, and you're totally right. It is a big topic, and I really appreciate the point that you made, that it's about making good choices, being a good person, but also being very being aware of what's out there and what's credible. Like being a critical consumer. So in February, you published a piece about fact checking. So how can educators, students, and parents make sure that information they find online is credible?
Yeah, to me, it's all about skepticism, not cynicism. That's what I always say. That's kind of my mantra when I think about fact-checking online and media literacy and news literacy. It's a really important issue. I think the issue itself has gotten a lot of attention in the media since the election, obviously. In some ways, that's really good, because it's bringing attention to this issue. But I find that a lot of the advice that's out there just reduces news and media literacy to just checking some boxes, or reducing it to this, the quote, fake news issue, and it becomes this partisan political argument, which, that conversation needs to happen. But I think it's more complex than that. To me, like I said, it's all about being skeptical, but not becoming cynical. And I think beyond that, in a more concrete sense, for teachers, I feel like there's a certain amount of web literacy and social media literacy that's really important. And for teachers, that's all about us actually teaching kids and teaching ourselves some basic mechanics around how does the web work? How does social media work? How do the different social media platforms operate? What are the mechanics of it? And so that we can demystify some of these technologies and understand how they work. And I think through that, we can understand better the context for the information we're receiving there. And it's tough, because we can't pretend that web searching and social media exist in some vacuum outside of the walls of our schools. I really think that we need to be teaching explicitly and experientially how to use these tools in our classrooms, and helping to prepare kids and ourselves. I think a lot of adults need this help as well, in terms of how to navigate the landscape of digital information, digital news, digital media.
Right. And I really like that point that you just made, because I did a couple of workshops for parents about, helping their students navigate online. And really the one thing that was kind of at the heart of it is not to run away from it, but to instead run towards it and embrace it
Yeah.
and educate yourself so that you can, help your children make good choices. So.
Right, right. I mean, especially with social media, I think so much of the conversation in schools is, whether people want to admit it or not, it's really based around a lot of fear. And I feel like we can't avoid that. We have to, I think you have to address it and face it, like you're saying, and just run towards it, figure it out, and help. I think school is the safe space where kids can learn about it and make some mistakes, but learn from those mistakes rather than in the real world.
Definitely. I totally hear you on that. Like that is a place where they're supposed to learn, and definitely be in a more protected environment. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so definitely. So kind of continuing along that, but taking a little detour, in terms of equity, when we start thinking of students receiving, bridging any kind of divides, like the digital divide or what have you, what does equity specifically mean to you, and in what ways can educators leverage technology to bridge these divides?
Right. I mean, when we talk about equity and education, it's hard. I think, to me, at its core, education is all about equity. That's the point of education to me. And I think first and foremost, we can't talk about equity without talking about disparities in funding in schools in the United States, and also just a flat out lack of adequate funding for education overall in the US. I mean, to me, it's astonishing that we don't have the most amazing education system in the world that is funded so well. And I could go off on a huge tangent here. Back to the issue of ed tech, I think when it comes to access, we need to do a lot more. And it is an issue of money and funding and devices. But I think we need to empower schools and districts and teachers and students to offer kids opportunities to use different technologies. And I think it's important to make sure that everyone has these opportunities. I mean, I ask myself the question sometimes, why is one school BYOD when another is not? What are we saying? What's the message we're sending when that happens? Why do we as a collective group of educators in America essentially say that we trust one group of students to use certain digital tools, but we don't trust a different group? And I think a lot of it at the end of the day comes down to just the issue of trust and empowering people. It's empowering administrators to make decisions that empower other people, like teachers. It's empowering teachers to make decisions that empower students. And I think it's about students empowering each other and probably us as well. And I think trust is a big part of it. I think I would like to see just more trust.
Yeah, totally. I would agree with that. And I love the point that you made about students empowering one another and empowering us. That's just, I mean, they just have so much to contribute, and learning with students, learning from students, that's definitely the way to go.
Yeah.
I also like that you mentioned the opportunity gaps, because a lot of times, when we talk about equity, like you say, a lot of times we talk about money, but we're not talking about like opportunity and ways that technology is used in schools. So
Right.
I appreciate you making that point as well.
Absolutely. I mean, money certainly is an issue as well. And I think funding for devices, for technologies, I mean, that's a real issue. But I think that often the discussion around equity in ed tech and it gets centered around money. And I think sometimes that discussion can end up being kind of a cop-out to say, well, we don't have the money, so it's whatever, we can't deal with it anyway. But I think the issue, it transcends that. I think it's going to be unique wherever you teach, though. I think you have to address the issues that are unique to your locality. But there are some that are universal as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree with that. And I know that one of the things that we're going to be talking about later is PD. And that, that also has an equity component, making sure that students have access to teachers that, that really, are going to maximize the learning.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, Cool, cool. So I see that you write a lot about equity. I might have Twitter stalked you just a little bit, and
That's
yeah,
okay.
but
That's good. That's what Twitter's for, right?
right, exactly. So at ISTE, then they just released a refresh of the standards for educators. So one of
Yeah.
the standards is collaborator, and under collaborator, then they were talking about how we should. I actually have the quote: demonstrate cultural competency when communicating with students, parents, and colleagues, and interact with them as co-collaborators in student learning. So you wrote an article back in August 2016 about ways that educators can leverage technology to connect with parents. So, so
Right.
what tips would you have for educators to connect with parents through technology?
Yeah, so a lot of times we talk about teacher-parent communication or parent-teacher communication. I never know which one it actually is. But really, I think that's the wrong label. I think the right label is parent-teacher-student communication. And I think so often, I mean, parent-teacher communication sounds great, but the problem is that it leaves students out of that equation. And I think that is the most important piece. And so when it comes to ed tech tools, I think the biggest opportunities in ed tech right now are tools that connect teachers, parents, and students and get them all on the same page, creates transparency and open communication. And I really think the key is centering all of those discussions around the work that students are doing, whether that's, kind of scores or grades. That can be one part of it, but to me, it also a more interesting way to have those discussions is around what are students creating, what are students producing, and I think I mean, what parent doesn't want to talk about all the cool stuff that their student is creating and making? And I feel like that's such an empowering place to start a conversation. It's great if we can have students lead that conversation and lead the parents and the teachers in that conversation. So there are some tech tools out there that do that, whether it's something like Seesaw, where students, it's more of like a portfolio tool, but it has parent communication built in and it's all based around what students are creating. But, I think another issue that comes up with student teacher parent communication is just access and equity. Again, it comes back to that. So I think a big thing for teachers is figuring out who their audience is. And by audience, I mean, who's your community of students and parents, and what's the best way to meet them where they are. That could be, a mobile-centric solution, kind of like Remind, where you can basically text message. It could be social media. It could just be a blog. It could be picking up the telephone. I don't know. I think it will vary depending on where you teach, and it'll vary based on who you are as a teacher as well, and what you have access to, what your students and parents have access to. We might have to differentiate for different students and different parents as well. So I think the biggest thing is just meeting your audience where they are and opening up the lines and really keeping it transparent. I think all too often, the teacher talks to the student talks to the parent, and then maybe the parent talks to the teacher. But it's rare that all three are in that same conversation at the same time. And I think the more we can do that, then it's transparent. Everyone knows that everyone knows. And I think it's a little bit easier to move forward.
Absolutely. I love that answer. The students absolutely need to be there, and they need to be, they need to be part of the conversation. So I really respect that. So I heard you speak of a couple tools in particular. Now there's one that escapes my mind, but there's one that actually translates for parents. Do you happen to know which one that is?
Well, a number of different tools do that, and translation is an important thing. I mean, especially when we're talking about equity, but when we're talking about, meeting our parents where they are, in some cases that is meeting someone where they are is in a different language. And so anytime, this is one of probably the best uses for translation in terms of ed tech, I think is communicating with parents. I think Class Dojo Messenger has translation, and I believe Remind has translation as well. There are probably many others that have translation features built in. And I think those features are great. I think the more you can reach out, even if the translation isn't perfect because it's a machine translating it, but I think people appreciate that, and I think it opens up the line of communication, which is good.
Right, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that. So definitely, making an effort to communicate. Um, in you know, and leveraging the power of technology to help us communicate in ways that we couldn't do otherwise, you know. So I'm definitely in agreement with that. So kind of continuing along that, there was a study done in California. I think that's where you are, right?
I am in California, yes.
Yeah, in California. So the Migration Policy Institute back in 2014 was saying that more than half of the population ages 16 to 26 were first or generation immigrants, with over a third of students designated as English learners. So kind of going along with what you were saying, because I know I've been in a situation where I had a student come to my classroom not speaking English. It might have been like, how can educators view their bilingualism in an added?
Are you there? I think we may have, the feed is slowing down, but I'll make sure you're there before I answer.
Let me try to adjust my bandwidth a little bit.
Oh, there we go. I heard you there for a moment.
Okay, cool. And I'm
Oh,
going
here we
try
go.
to.
We're back. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you a little bit better. Yeah, there we
All right.
go.
How about now? Is this good?
Oh, this is better. Yeah, this is better.
All right. Fantastic.
Okay. Yeah, but so, you know, towards the issue of ELs and how do we address, some of your question I lost, but what I gathered was we're talking about English learners. How do we address the issue of helping English learners the best we can, especially tapping into the opportunities for developing bilingualism? Is that in line?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah. I was the last part of the question, I was saying like their bilingualism, their emerging bilingualism, using that as a resource
Right.
in our schools.
Absolutely. So, you know, we were just talking about translation as a great tool in student-teacher parent communication, and I think translation is essential for that and for many things. But I think when it comes to classroom instruction, when it comes to kids' language acquisition, especially when it comes to kids' emerging bilingualism in the classroom, I think we have to go beyond translation. I think there are ed tech tools that translate for kids, and that's great in terms of giving kids access, getting kids the directions and instructions they need. I think that's really important. But I think all too often, and this is more when I'm speaking to a teacher audience, I can say one thing, but when I'm speaking to a developer audience, audience of developers who are making ed tech tools, I might think a little bit differently. And this is kind of my answer for developers, which is that, you know, if you're creating an ed tech tool, translation's great, but that you don't get to just check the ELL box by adding translation to your tool. I think there's a lot more. If you're really trying to create a tool that helps English language learners acquire language and learn, you have to go beyond that. And for teachers, I think it's all about repurposing tools that might not be, quote, educational. They might just be tech tools that help communication or collaboration or creation. And these are the things that will help students acquire language. And the big thing is just practice, giving students lots of opportunities to have a voice and to practice using language and to share what they're doing. And I think a lot of it is, to me, a big part of it is digital storytelling and digital creation, allowing students to tell their story or tell a story. It doesn't have to be like their story, although that's a personal story is usually pretty nice and a great thing to tell and connect with. But letting students tell a story and then share that story and practice. There's a lot of, and you know, obviously ELL teachers know this, but they'll be able to pick out the discrete skills in, you know, reading, writing, speaking, and listening that go along with the different parts of writing, creating, and telling a story, and then listening to that story on the other end. And so it's really all about that practice. And I think there are lots of tech tools that do that. To me, digital storytelling tools are kind of the most interesting and the most experiential and the most fun tools to use for that. Those are the types of tools I like to use when I was an ELL teacher.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm wrapping up my dissertation right now, and that was actually one of the things that we were that I was focusing on. It was
cool.
Yeah, it was an ESOL teacher in New York, and she had her students create podcasts, and it was just, or so it was cool because the
Yes.
student was learning vocabulary and story elements and describing them in this video, and it was just really really cool. So definitely learning through creating, and
Yes.
yeah.
And I think one thing I saw at ISTE this year, this is a little bit off topic, but I hope that's okay. But one thing I saw at ISTE this year was that the trend seems to be going more towards student creation, in terms of ed tech. And I really feel like that's a great thing, not just for ELLs, but for all students. How can we use technology to help students create, to empower them to be the storytellers, to be the creators, to be the ones sharing their knowledge? I think that's awesome.
Absolutely. I would agree as well. And I'm outside, so hence why I'm going like this every
That's okay.
But there was a question that came up for you in the live chat. So thank you, Sandra, for this one. She wants to know, what do you think about gamification when it comes to learning?
Yeah, I mean, so I think the term gamification gets thrown around a lot, and I think there are really two things going on. There's gamification and what we might call game-based learning. And I'm a big proponent of game-based learning and not a big proponent of gamification necessarily. Here at Common Sense Education, when we look at digital tools, one of the things we think about is how well the learning is baked in a game or to an experience that students are having in an online learning situation or in a digital learning situation. It's the difference between, answering a bunch of math questions and then earning or winning some time playing a game. Could be gamified, I guess. Versus maybe there's a game that the challenge involves math and you have to use math in authentic ways to play the game, and that is the game. And so that's kind of a cheap metaphor to explain it, but I really think that game-based learning is amazing. I think it's important to see games as experiences, not instruction. They're kind of like a game should be, you should prepare for a game like you would a field trip or like a movie screening in class. It's like, let's immerse ourselves in this game, let's jump in, and then we'll step back and reflect on it later. And the learning comes from that. It's not necessarily about, answering multiple choice or, being as fast as you can at answering the question. So I hope that answers the question, but that would be my take on gamification.
Yeah, I feel you. I've seen gamification done many, many ways. I've seen some that were very effective and some that were kind of like, yeah. So, I mean,
Yeah.
It all depends on how it's rolled out, but I'm also a
Totally.
huge proponent of game-based learning as well.
Yeah, I mean, gamification can be very fun too. And I think anytime you boost engagement, that's a great thing. But
absolutely, I hear you on that. Okay, cool. So we're going to switch gears to one more area. So we're going to talk a little bit about PD. So
right.
yeah, one of my favorites actually.
PD is a loaded term, I feel like, among teachers.
It is. So, I mean, I know that there's like a lot of discussion about the term, like what is PD, what is professional learning? I'm going to use them interchangeably just for the next few minutes. So sure, I'm not like, I'm not weighting it in any way, but how has professional learning changed since you've been in education? And do you foresee any kind of new developments coming down the pike in a way they'll be rolled out?
Well, I mean, obviously, the advent of online PLNs has come into being probably since towards the end of when I was in the classroom and the beginning of when I started working here at Common Sense. And that's the biggest shift. I think the fact that teachers can start a PLN, can go online, connect with anyone. I mean, what we're doing right here, right now is a good example. And I think that's the biggest shift. Teaching can be isolating. I think this is something that a lot of people don't realize, but it's really easy to get kind of in your classroom, stuck, you're kind of in your little space and you do what you do and everyone has their own unique way of doing it. And that's what's great about teaching. But at the same time, I had my friends and colleagues that taught with me in my school just across the hall or down the hall, but they were kind of doing a different thing than I was doing, and that's okay. But how do I connect with the other teachers, the other experts out there that really inspire me and can help motivate me and that I can give back to as well? And so I think just being connected online is the biggest shift in that, in professional development, professional learning that I've seen.
Absolutely. So when we were at ISTE, then I had the pleasure of hanging out with you, and you interviewed me for your piece about
Thank
PLN.
you, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
So now it's your turn. So you talked a little bit about your philosophy regarding connecting. So how have you seen connections impact like your own professional learning?
Well, I think, so here's a good example. The fact that I'm here at Common Sense Education now is a good example of this. I think I started here in 2013, and it was around 2012, I think, that I first got connected on Twitter. And that was I was just searching for something. I was like, how do I, because I was really engaged with it. I'm thinking back. So it was the first year that the iPad had just come out. And my school, I was in a school of 3,000 students, about 150 teachers, and we got one set of iPads, and for the whole school, like one set of 30 iPads, and I was really lucky because one of the administrators said, "Hey, Jeff, I want you to be the person who tests these things out." And I was like, "Cool, iPad, I heard about this, I want to try it." And we did that, but I didn't really have any resources. I didn't have anyone to connect with. It was such a new thing. And I ended up, Apple sent some people to our school. I don't even remember who now. And they were trying to train us a little bit on how to use the iPad. And I ended up calling one of the guys from Apple and just saying, "Hey, how did you end up doing what you do? How do you work for Apple in education? What's this whole ed tech industry? What is this?" And his only advice to me was, get on Twitter, names of people to follow, and start there, and that's all I'm going to tell you. And I was like, okay, that wasn't the answer I'm looking for, but it turned out it was, because through that, I started getting connected with all of these different people on Twitter. And through that, I learned about Common Sense Education, and one thing led to another, and I ended up working here. But to me, I feel like there's so many great and amazing teachers online, and it's awesome, but it can also be intimidating. But don't let it be, I guess, is my advice to someone who's getting connected now. I think a lot of times in our PLNs, we see someone awesome who's doing all this amazing stuff, but don't be afraid to see yourself as that same kind of awesome, amazing person as someone else. We're all in this together, and we all have important things to offer and to share with each other.
Absolutely. And the power, like the importance of everyone's voice, that was definitely one of my takeaways from ISTE. I really appreciated that message this year, like how it was constantly reinforced that we're all, like you said, all in this together. We all have something to contribute. So it really felt like, very communal. So
definitely.
All right. Yeah. So following along that line, I have one more question for you. So
sure.
So how can people get in touch with you online?
So, well, Twitter is a good way. I'm at Jeffrey Knutson on Twitter, so you can hit me up anytime. You can follow me if you want. I'll try to follow back. Do you want me to spell it out? I don't know, or people could probably find it if they just.
You can spell it if you want to.
I'll let people find it. I'm there. You'll be able to find it. I'm on LinkedIn. You can email me at Common Sense. I'm just J Knutson, Knutson at commonsense.org if you want to send me an email. I'm also part of a really cool Common Sense Educators Facebook group that we started recently, and it's been going crazy lately. So many people have been joining. There are tons of amazing teachers there sharing ideas and resources. Other than that, though, social media-wise, I keep everything on the down low, just for friends and family. But Twitter is my one where, connect with me there. That's the spot.
All right, that is so awesome, and really, really, I appreciate your time. Appreciate you coming on and sharing with the EduMatch family all about your amazing insights. So this was really good. So
I'm honored. Thank you.
Oh no, the honor is like I'm like fangirling over here, but
awesome. Likewise.
But it was really great to chat with you, and thank you to everyone who has been tuning in. Saw the comments on YouTube Live, so thank you for those questions and comments, and just wanted to remind everybody that we will be back Sunday at our regular time, 6 p.m. Eastern time, where we will be talking about restorative practices with Victor Small and Kate. So check us out Sunday, 6 p.m. Eastern, and same link, podcasts.edumatch.org/tweet talk. So definitely looking forward to seeing everybody there. So everybody have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.